But if you are new to Blommer Beauty, then it's an organic beauty and wellbeing store, right. And we also help our customers in their kind of beauty and wellbeing journey with lots of live streams, education and experiences. So tonight I'm joined by Kate, who is a menstrual and menopause expert, coach and therapist, and she also does yoga therapy and retreats as well, and has written extensively on menopause and perimenopause, and in fact wrote a blog for us over at blommerbeauty.com if you want to check it out, on perimenopause, which I think is a topic that not many of our customers actually know about. So I'm really excited because I know Kate's got an action-packed workshop for us tonight. So no matter where you are on the journey, if you've never heard of it before, or if you're just starting to go through it, or you're in the middle of it, then there'll be something that's really helpful for you. If you've got questions along the way, just pop them in the chat. You can either toggle it so that it goes to everyone, or just to Kate if you want to keep it private. It's a completely safe space. I'm sure people will have similar questions, but yeah, if you would rather it be private, then that's absolutely fine too. And there is going to be a replay which I'll send out tomorrow to everyone with some extra treats from Kate, but if you did want to make notes or journal along the way, then absolutely be my guest. So yeah, let's hand over to you, Kate, and looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Thank you for that lovely welcome. I'm just so excited to share all this information, and I wanted to give you all the juice. So I've got heaps to share. There's all kinds of things. So it'll probably leave you with you'll be loads better informed, but it'll probably leave you with a load more questions. So what Karen and I decided was to give 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to ask questions. So if you have stuff, stick them in the chat and we'll come to them at the end, and I will be delighted to answer your questions then. Before I get going, I'd like to sort of remind you that everything here is an invitation. If there's anything that doesn't sit well for you, if there's anything that feels uncomfortable, please just let it flow over you. You know, there's no one size fits all approach for you. And one of the things that Karen introduced me as an expert, and I always feel slightly uncomfortable with that. Oh, hang on, I'm just going to mute everybody. I always feel slightly uncomfortable about that because you are the expert on your own body and on your own situation. So while I have suggestions, they are by no means the ultimate solution for anything. So please let things flow over you if they don't sit well. And use your discernment, which is one of the ACE menopausal gifts. So what I'm going to cover today is what menopause is. I'm going to cover why there is so much, in my opinion, completely unnecessary fear around it, really so that you can unpack your own beliefs and so you can see more clearly what's happening. And then I'm going to offer you a reframe by using a seasonal model so you can see how perimenopause fits into your psychological growth and have a look at the gifts that are available for you. Then we're going to have a meditation so you can feel for yourself feeling your own experience of early perimenopause and feel into your own self-care. And then I'm going to finish off with this kind of whirlwind tour. It's a 9-point checklist for self-care to prepare you for perimenopause, but also which will also help your hormones now. So it's really a kind of win-win kind of situation. So there's a lot. It's a really rich evening, and I wanted to really offer you, you know, a really broad and balanced picture. So here we go with what perimenopause actually means. So it might start typically in your late 30s or 40s sometime. And its arrival will be obvious for some people, and for other people won't notice it at all. So you'll hear me say this like endlessly. There is a huge variation. And I'm just going to do a tech thing. I'm just going to check that I've got the right view. And I think I'm going to pin myself just to make sure that's better. Okay, I'm going to pin myself so that you get to see me rather than a blank screen. Okay, sorry about that. I just kind of swam off and now I'm swimming back again. So there is huge variation in people's experience depending on all sorts of things, cultural stuff, how knackered you are, and all sorts of things. And it's a very sensitive time. And if you imagine, it's a bit like puberty or pregnancy, you know, your hormones are on the change. So there's a sensitivity needed. And this is something that we, in our culture, we don't really understand. So that when things become, you know, maybe difficult for you, if the health situation's thrown up and there's more emotional sensitivity, we feel that we're going wrong sometimes, but actually this is part of the picture. So perimenopause means around menopause. It just means around that time. So it's a very vague term. And menopause happens when it's been a year since your last period. And then after that, you're postmenopausal. So technically menopause is just a moment, you know, it's all perimenopause, tiny bit of menopause, and then you're in postmenopause. So it happens in this country, it happens typically between 45 and 55 years old. That's the normal range, unless you have a surgical menopause where your womb and ovaries have been removed, or a chemical menopause, for example, following cancer treatment. About 5% of the population have an early menopause, and that's seen as before 45. So again, there's a very wide range of experiences, most of which are normal. And you know, one of the like major takeaways I'm offering you tonight is that everything is made worse by stress. The most major hormone disruptor is stress, is cortisol. So once there is fear about, oh, there's this thing and so said it was really awful, then that makes you more stressed. So by looking at what exactly your particular fears are, you will help to improve your symptoms. The other thing to look out for is toxicity. And I'll be talking about this later. And that means toxicity in food, toxicity in your environment, both kind of physical, like fire retardants and stuff, but also the cultural attitudes towards perimenopause. So we'll just coming into that, which is about fear. So you may notice that the language that is used about perimenopause is relentlessly negative. It's all fear-based, and it drives me mad. It drives me mad. And there are sort of four aspects of this. The first one is that we live in a misogynistic culture. You know, our overculture is patriarchal, and women are prized for conforming, being nice, looking after people and being in service and being productive. And yeah, still, I mean, things have changed, but still really family life is prized. You know, knocking out babies is a thing. And this particular kind of fertility is highly praised. So we live in, that's the major fear basis, this misogynist culture. And our culture is also ageist. If you think about the sort of terms that we use about older women like me, dried up, or hag, or witch, or useless, or washed up, and all this stuff. And you know, I can feel in my body and my throat tightening up talking about it. And everything menopausal, it seems to be painted a bit greyish and a bit tasteful and a bit, oh well, it's perfectly natural there, you know. And this has nothing to do with our experience. You know, this is some sort of weird patronizing thing that happens in social media and in advertising. It's very, very odd. And it's an ageist culture. And if you don't believe me, just ask somebody, ask a woman in her 50s about getting a job, and if she's telling the truth about how old she is. It's really, there is a huge amount of ageism in employment. Perimenopause is a psychological process as well as a physical one. And when you feel, one of the ways you can feel it's arising is because you're going to be questioning and you're going to be examining what's working in your life and what is not. One of my teachers calls it the veil of estrogen is being lifted. And Kate Moran wrote a brilliant piece about this. It's like Kate Moran says, it's like coming off drugs. It's like coming down after taking ecstasy. You're not so nice. And it's not that perimenopause is the problem. You know, it's what's happening is the problem. You know, it's that we're no longer willing to sort stuff out. So this kind of discomfort that many of us feel is natural and real. And it's like a sort of massive Mary Kondo life decluttering moment where we can let go of what is no longer serving us and move on. But this engenders fear if you're not expecting it. So the last aspect, I kind of mentioned it before, is that it's a time of sensitivity. So if you feel more sensitive to food, to hormones, emotionally more sensitive, you might think that you're falling apart or something's going wrong. But actually, if you think about it in terms of being comparable to pregnancy or to puberty, you would be kind. You would have a bit of a rest and be a bit kinder to yourself. And this is what is required through these years. So what I would encourage you to do is to examine your beliefs about what it is, what you personally feel it is to be a woman. Examine your beliefs about age, about getting older, and what you feel that means, and unpack that stuff, because that will help to dissolve your feel and see clearly what you want in your life. You know, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Age is this huge, growing older is this huge privilege, an absolutely precious prize. And perimenopause is the start of this process where you're growing into a new kind of person, into second spring, which is a hugely creative and richly creatively fertile time after menopause. It's very, very exciting, or it can be. It has the potential to be. And be aware that though everybody's estrogen will drop, our estrogen will drop. You know, that happens unless you take HRT. Unless you replace it, your estrogen will drop. But not everybody suffers symptoms. So there are other elements at play here. So that's the fear department. That's the fear department done with. I'm glad to have moved. Let's move on from that. And I'm going to share with you an image here. Ooh. where is it? Oh, look, I made this beautiful cover. Well, you can't see it because I haven't shared my screen with you yet. There we go. That one. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen now. I made this beautiful cover for you to start with, which I didn't put on. So part of this reframe is, move that up a bit, it's a seasonal reframe, okay? So we're going to start with the menstrual, looking at the menstrual cycle, and the reason for this will become clear shortly. So thinking about the menstrual cycle, if you take the autumn here as the premenstrual phase, I'm just going to move the little box so you can see the, whoa, it's gone all weird. Nope. Let me move that down. There we go. It's a bit weird, but at least you can read it. There we go. So think about autumn as the premenstrual phase, and autumn is a time of coming inwards, of coming into yourself, of really understanding your true values. Endlessly unpopular, premenstruum, because you tell the truth. Then from the premenstrual phase, you come into your period, which is a wintry phase. So that's much more, if you think about, we're coming into winter now, so, you know, we want to be warmer and quieter and kind of tucked up, and, you know, everything's a bit slower, coming more into ourselves. Then post-menstruation, after your period, there's a spring period, and you might feel like you're sort of emerging again. There might be a bit of exploration or new ideas, this kind of emergent possibilities. And coming into the summer of your menstrual cycle, you'll be in ovulation. And that is much more about getting out there. You might be wanting to be partying, doing stuff. You might be feeling really sexual, having a good time, much more out there. So you can see from this cycle that you have this cycle of moving outwards, coming out through spring, getting out into the world in summer, and then coming back inwards into winter. So there's this menstrual flow. And the reason that I'm showing you this is because perimenopause is also an autumnal phase, and the self-care, the triggers and the challenges that you find in your premenstruum are very likely to be the same as what will be going on in your perimenopause, but over a longer period of time. So I can't see you because you have your cameras turned off, but I can imagine your faces as I'm saying, it's like, oh my God, how long is it going to go on for? But let me say again, you already know the self-care. You already know what can trigger you. So you are already empowered and you already have the skills. So let me move on to the life season. So in this image, it's the same image, clearly, but we're talking about life seasons here. So if we start, say, here in spring. So if you imagine the vertical part of this tree as your first period as a young woman, and then you come through here, this might be your teens and 20s, and it's the same as post-menstruation. You're exploring and going out into the world and discovering stuff, and you know, you're just kind of getting out there and discovering who you are with a slightly playful and falling on your face, obviously, because we do, right? And then in midlife, again, there's this increasing yang quality, this outward focus and sovereignty. You know, you're growing into yourself. So in your summer years, so in your 30s and early 40s, you're going to be focused on a career. You know, you're going to be focused on manifesting what is inside you out into the world. And that might include having a family and having babies, or it might not. And very often, even if we we're not able to manifest in our 30s and 40s. And I'm a late bloomer. I didn't get it together for a very long time. You will still feel the pressure to do that. And it's partly societal, but it's partly to do with these seasons, this natural flow of becoming bigger and becoming more egoic in the best sense of the word. You know, your ego is getting stronger in the world. And then here we go, edging into perimenopause, into autumn. And this is in your, you know, if you have within a regular time scale, although it can be different, in your 40s at some point, you will start to go, what? You want me to do what? And then you will experience more no in your life. Guaranteed, you will have more no. And you will be questioning. And this is this natural part of coming back inwards towards yourself. So you're kind of moving back in, becoming more sensitive. Oh, I missed out the I there, inward focus, not a nward focus. You're becoming more sensitive and coming into the winter of menopause where your task is to rest and be quiet and really, really take tender, sweet care of yourself in that winter, because there's a whole second cycle. And you'll see here, you come into the second spring. So this whole process comes through the quietness of winter so you can have a whole new cycle and a whole new manifestation coming into spring and into summer, into a second summer and a second autumn. And, you know, you only have to look at women in their 60s, you know, and frankly, they're having a bloody good time. You know, they're out there. I mean, probably not at the moment because, you know, because of the pandemic, but outside of that, they're out there walking across deserts and having fabulous sex and doing PhDs and starting charities. And, you know, there's this fantastic time of creativity and it's just, you know, it's just very, very exciting time of expansion post-menopause. But we don't hear about that in our lives. So again, I'm going to say it again, apart from the stress thing, messing up your hormones, I'll say it again, that the self-care that you are already practicing or that you already know about in your premenstruum and in the time of your period will support you through these times. So if you still have a cycle, it is just an absolute gift for you to pay attention to what is happening and pay attention to what triggers you and what you need in that time. And towards the end of the hour, I'm going to be sharing more about that. So I'm going to run a quick rundown of the gifts of autumn. So if you're still pulling faces out there and going, oh, I hate being premenstrual, there are some gifts in there, and here we go with the gifts. So one of the major gifts is your discernment. You absolutely know when somebody is telling the truth or not. And your intuition is really sharp in autumn. It kind of sharpens through autumn and winter, so it gets stronger and stronger. And you just know stuff. You just know. And you don't know why you know, but you know. Your intuition is really available to you. And this brings out a certain amount of clarity. You know, I'm a terrible ditherer. I could never decide what to eat in restaurants until I got to perimenopause. And it's yes, this, and no to that. You know, there's an absolute clarity about what works and what doesn't. And that is partly to do with being tired, having limited energy, and you can clearly feel what depletes you and what fills you up. So there's this clarity as well. And another gift that comes is that you start to value your inner life more. You know, summer is all out there and the focus is out there, but in autumn, as you come inwards, there's a sort of recalibration that happens, and you sort of, you can nourish your inner creatures, whether that's your inner child, nourishing your dream life, nourishing your creativity. It can be a phenomenally creative time if we're not too knackered, if we haven't worn ourselves out, if we haven't burnt out. And you understand your values, what's really important to you, and you understand your needs as well, because they're shouting. You know, if you have trouble in this time, it's your needs that are shouting really loudly. And of course, all of these gifts, on the flip side is the challenge, right? So when the discernment goes rogue, you get the kind of, you get a harridan, basically. And that's the rage that comes. And I must also say that autumn also brings your shadow into the light. So many of us experience rage and grief, and these are natural aspects of autumn. You know, it's seen as a negative, because our culture does not like angry women, and our culture does not like strong emotion or grief. We do not live in a grief tolerant society, even post Diana. I remember that. Anyway, grief isn't allowed. We're not allowed to really have these feelings. But if we're going to move on, if we're going to let go and move on into second spring, we need to grieve. You know, it's part of the process, and it's a healthy thing. And the truth telling and the clarity can be somewhat unskillful sometimes, I'm told. My partner tells me. You know, so that this clarity, the other side, is that it can be unskillful and hurtful and get us into hot water. And because we autumn, also another aspect of autumn and winter is that we feel that we want to separate from the world. We want to leave our partners and our jobs and just go somewhere else, just go run for the hills or the mountains or the beach or just somewhere and just go, you know. And if we're not getting enough quality me time, then this call can be very strong, and relationships very often break down because there isn't enough space, and because we're burning out, because we haven't rested. And it can be very overwhelming too. So I'm just going to stop sharing now. There we go. I'm not trying to soft soap you. I don't want to sell you a lie about it being easy, because it's very often really challenging. It's a really challenging time. But it's challenging for a reason, and it's challenging. It's a sort of challenge that will help you grow if you can allow it. And the third takeaway, I told you this was rich, rich pickings. My other takeaway is that when we arrive at perimenopause in burnout, which many of us do, because we live in a culture where busyness is prized, where we have to be busy all the time, you know, and things are very intense, then this will negatively affect your perimenopause. Because if you think about it as a time of sensitivity and change, if you arrive there already with your tanks empty, then you have nothing, you have no juice to make the change. So I'll be talking about filling your tanks later. And the primary way for you to fill your tanks is to rest enough, and particularly pay attention to rest in your premenstruum and over your period as well. So I'm going to say a bit more about resting a bit later on in the 9-point plan for self-care at the end of it. I hope that's not too ridiculous, but yeah, that I wanted to, as I said at the beginning, I wanted to really offer you the whole picture. So we're going to slow everything down now, and I'm going to stop talking so very quickly. And we're going to have time for the visualization. So please get yourself comfy. You don't have to look at the screen. It's just me banging on. There's nothing to see. Hopefully you can cozy down on the sofa or in bed, or you're somewhere really nice and comfy and you've got a blanket or two, maybe a cushion for your head. So you don't need to look at the screen now. So I'm going to chime you in with some chimes. And you, again, it's all a suggestion. You know, there's nothing here that you have to take on if it doesn't sit well with you. And this visualization is going to help you feel what kind of self-care from the inside that you can put in place now to take care of yourself. And that will help your hormones now, your hormone balance now, but also help you prepare for perimenopause. So let yourself get really comfy, and you can sit down or lie down, whatever feels comfortable. And you can let your eyes close or soften if that feels nice. And noticing where your body meets your chair or sofa. Noticing how supported you are. Noticing where you meet the floor, if your feet are on the floor, or you're sitting on the floor. Let yourself feel comfortable, as though the chair or the floor was rising up to meet you. And with each out breath, let yourself soften down towards the earth. You might like to make your out breath a little bit longer each time. Or maybe you breathe out through your mouth with a sigh, maybe. You always have a yawn, wiggle your jaw. And imagine before you, in your mind's eye, that you're walking in the countryside. It's a perfect summer's day. And it's your perfect weather. And you're wearing your favourite clothes. And feeling really good in yourself, really smooth, you know, that inside smooth feeling in yourself, feeling really good. And you come to a door in a wall, and feeling in your pocket, you find a key to open the door. It fits into the lock and turns smoothly. And the door opens into a beautiful garden. And you turn to close and lock the door again, placing the key back in your pocket. And you smell the perfume of the flowers. And it feels safe and good to be held within these strong walls. And you take the path into the garden, just enjoying the beautiful blooms around you. Noticing how the perfume changes as you pass roses, honeysuckle. All your favourite flowers are here, healthy and strong and carefully tended. You're aware of birdsong and the distant hum of pollinating insects, and feel so much joy in the vibrancy of this space. And following the path, you come to a cozy seat in the shade where you can enjoy the summer vibes. Here you are in the summer of your summer years. And you see coming towards you the guardian of the summer garden, your helpful friend. And they have all the knowledge and understanding to bring the plants into blossom and fruit. And she brings you a gift, offering tools you need to blossom. And it might be a practical thing like food or something nourishing, or maybe a fan or a shade to keep you cool, or a cold drink maybe, or maybe it's a feeling, an emotion. Just notice in your body what emerges as you receive this gift from the guardian, a gift of self-care for your summer. It might be permission to dance or a reminder to connect. Just see if somebody comes into mind. Or maybe something symbolic, a symbolic image that comes to you, or a thought, or a memory. Just notice. And be open to what arises within you as the guardian offers you gifts for your summer years. And letting that go. As you enjoy the garden from your seat, you notice that the blooms are starting to be past their best. The petals are dropping. And the smell in the air starts to change. That the season is changing into early autumn. And you notice the softness that arises. The soft light. And the fruit in the garden is becoming juicy and ripening around you. The leaf colour starts to become more vibrant. It's cooler. And once again, the guardian comes with gifts, this time for your autumn years, for your perimenopause. She has all the knowledge required for you to flourish in your autumn. And again, it might be something practical, like a blanket, or a particular kind of food, a warm drink maybe, or you might notice an emotional response, perhaps a need to withdraw, to slow down, to lie on the ground, on the soft ground. Or maybe the guardian offers a symbolic object for you. Just be open to what arises within you as the guardian offers you your gifts for your autumn years, for your perimenopause. And letting that go now. And taking your gifts with you, it's time to leave the garden. But before you go, you are welcome to leave anything behind that you don't want to take with you. So this might be symbolic or a belief, and actually you don't even have to know what it is you want to ditch. You can just leave something behind, a bag of unknown stuff behind that doesn't serve you anymore, and leave it on the compost heap and leave that behind. And then take your path back to the door moving easily and finding your way back. And you take the key from your pocket and open the door and pass safely through back into the countryside, closing and locking the door behind you and taking your gifts with you. And as we come towards the end of the meditation, let yourself take slightly deeper breaths. Maybe deeper breaths out. And you can have a yawn and a stretch as you make your way back into the present, coming back into the here and now. Becoming aware of where you are, feeling your chair or where you're lying coming to support you, reaching up to support you. And you can softly open your eyes if you haven't already. And it's quite a nice thing to make a note or two about your experience, whatever that is, in your journal or a piece of paper. And that just helps you to capture the gifts of summer and autumn self-care. And if you'd like to share in the chat the gifts that you received, then that would be lovely. We'd love to share that with you. So you may have received clear information from that meditation. You may have received something a bit symbolic and a bit woo. If it was a bit woo for you, I would advise you to pay attention to your dreams and see what emerges over the next couple of evenings. And just to let it sit and be curious as to what emerges. Because sometimes our subconscious speaks in ways that we don't necessarily get immediately. So give yourself space, or you might like to journal about it. Yeah, so we're sort of shifting tone again, and we're going to go into this checklist. So I'm going to share my screen again now. There we go. Okay, so here we go, your 9-point checklist. And I think that's, yeah, you should be able to see that if I move it that way. There we go. So these are things that will help your hormones now, and they will help you to feel better. And the hormone system, the endocrine system, is fantastically complicated, subtle, beautiful structure, and it affects absolutely everything about us: how we feel, our mood, our energy, our metabolic rate, the whole damn thing. So managing your hormone balance is like this royal road to good health. So we have 9 points and 15 minutes. Oof. Okay, so this is necessarily going to be a pointer. These are going to be pointers for you to look at, think about where in your life you'd like to tweak. And I must say that you might feel overwhelmed by all this information, but change happens, sustainable change happens in our lives when we make small changes. So I would say taking the sort of soul information from the meditation as a guide, only choose one thing a month. Make small changes are more sustainable than sort of completely overhauling your diet. Okay. So what is self-care? What do I mean by this? I think it's really important to say that it's not to do with spending lots of money. It's much more, you know, you can go to expensive spas and have a horrible time, unfortunately. I mean, what a privilege, but it's much more about kind words towards yourself, about forgiving yourself when you mess up. And it's doing that work about being kind to yourself as you age, thinking about what having a female body means to you, and forgiving yourself for that too. This is the kind of self-care I'm talking about, not about sort of outsourcing and spending a lot of money on stuff. So this is really, I really want to emphasize this is not about money, and it is about doing it in little bites, little doable steps, little doable bites. So fill your tanks. So again, this is coming into sort of burnout territory. The more depleted and the more exhausted you are, the worse your menstrual and perimenopause issues will be. So the answer is to rest. And yes, our lives are all full to bursting, and there is no time for this. So again, what I'm suggesting is that you put in 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, particularly in your premenstruum and in your winter. And where that isn't possible, you can go slower. You can walk more slowly. You can take a breath between tasks. You can slow everything down. And, you know, I would really suggest that you question the cultural norm about being busy all the time and question how productive that is. And use your discernment about what is useful for you to do, you know? And there's always delegating and there's always rescheduling. So filling your tanks, and I have a yoga nidra, which is a beautiful kind of meditation, which there are lots free on my site, which will give you the link in the follow-up email with the recording. Meditation and sleeping and going to bed earlier and resting and going slowly. Fill your tanks. You know, you're absolutely entitled and I hate that L'Oreal thing about being worth it, but you are worthy of rest and doing nothing. So, learning to love your premenstrual phase. I can imagine your faces with that. But I've said this before, and it's just so key that you already have all the tools that you need. And when you're feeling the pinch in your premenstrual phase, if you can give yourself a tiny bit of space to soften into, well, what do I really need here? Is it to be heard? Is it to have more space? Is it that I need to just say no and set up really clear boundaries here? And if you can look at where your issue, how to soothe yourself and what the need is, what this legitimate need is. It's not about sort of making it small. This is a legitimate need that is speaking more loudly at this time in your cycle. And you might not learn to love your premenstrual phase, but you could learn to get curious about what's happening here, changing the relationship a bit. Okay, stress. You know, cortisol is the major hormone disruptor. And we can't control what life throws at us. I mean, look at this year, you know, who would have thought that all this would have come about? Who would have thought? But we can control how we respond to the stress, you know, and we can develop strategies to manage them. And that, you know, this is not surprising information. This is stuff you already know. You already have the tools to manage this. So this includes getting enough rest, you know, going to bed a bit earlier, maybe taking time off, really resting at the weekends. It might be enforcing your boundaries so that when you're, you know, if you have a boss who's really pushing you, that you find out where your edge is and you turn your phone off. And, you know, don't get me started on screen time. Here we are on Zoom endlessly. You know, there has to be a time at which there is no screen because it does my head in. And that's hard, you know, because we're always responsive, but making boundaries like that, you will see effects and you will get happier. You just get happier, you know. when you can manage your stress in this way. Managing your diary well, that's another thing about spacing things out, making sure there's not too much going on, making good space in between things. Regular exercise and movement that you enjoy. You know, there's so much kind of obligation and kind of there's so many, what do I mean, like so much tension around exercise, about having to exercise and all this kind of stuff, and not letting yourself change it up. So for example, in your menstrual spring and summer, so after your period and in the mid-cycle when you're ovulating, you know, you might want to go running or do weights or something. But maybe in your premenstruum and in your winter, your autumn, and in your period, maybe you can just do a bit of a yin yoga class and cool it down and rest, or maybe nothing at all, or maybe go for a walk, and that's fine too. I think that using pleasure is the best way to manage stress. And we'll come to a bit more about that later. And saying no, oh, hang on, this goes up. Yeah. Learning to say no. So I've had to learn how to say no. And it's taken me quite a while to do it. I was a bit of a pushover. But to say yes to yourself, and that's kind of, you know, it's a bit of a meme and it's a bit pat. It's actually quite hard, because to say yes, you have to push other stuff out of your life and say no to other stuff. So learning to say no is a fantastic autumnal skill. And as I alluded to before, pleasure is a fantastic perimenopause and premenstrual self-care, because the hormones that are released when you feel pleasure affect everything. The serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine and all this really good stuff when you feel pleasurable. So what would make you happy? You know, what kind of pleasure would make you happy? And that might mean eating a piece of, you know, potentially, and I love this, that it might be better for you to eat a fantastic piece of cake very slowly and mindfully than it would be to choke down a kale smoothie, you know, out of guilt and pressure. What gives you pleasure? And making regular time for pleasure as well. You know, how can you really give yourself that? Really feel you deserve that? And that includes orgasm. And that includes food with friends. You know, might be on Zoom at the moment until the 2nd of December, but and belly laughs and candlelit baths and whatever it is, you know, you already know what it is that really gives you pleasure. So I've said a bit about this, so I'm kind of covering it twice, that to find a movement that feels good all through your cycle. So that could be a number of different things, and to really trust that your body knows what kind of movement will suit you. And I've spoken a little bit about the difficult feelings that can come up in the premenstrual phase and in perimenopause. How much of that can you allow and accept in yourself? Clearly a rhetorical question, because your shadow does emerge in your autumn, in the autumn of your menstrual cycle and the autumn of your life. But allowing yourself to feel these feelings is key for you to move on through into second spring and to let go of what's no longer serving you. Fabulous medicine, self-care for perimenopause, is to surround yourself with positive people. So, you know, hanging out with people who love you, who think that you're fab, who tell you you're fab, who are in the same experience, you know, so you can talk about what's happening freely, and who you trust and who nourish you and who fill your heart with joy. Those are the people you want around you. And really to ditch the vampires. You know, life is too short to be vampired, to be sucked dry and to be gaslighted. Okay, again, it's not an easy thing to do necessarily, because relationships can often be very tricky and complex. But building more positive support in your life with lovely people is just such, it's just such great support. Okay, and the last thing, 3 minutes, is about toxicity. So there's a whole load of stuff. So I've lumped it all together at the end. So again, this is not new. You know this stuff. You absolutely know this stuff. But adding pulses and roughage and more fruit and veg will make a difference to your hormone balance. And unfortunately, I'm so sorry that sugars and refined carbs and caffeine and alcohol, you know, if you can reduce them, then you will see a difference. You know, I'm definitely not the kind of bossy food person, but it is true that if you can reduce them, you will see a difference. For the chemicals, I mean, this is why I'm so delighted to be presenting this with Karen at Blommer Beauty, because the kind of products that Blommer are offering will be just fab. You know, just fab, because they don't contain the kind of toxicity that regular mainstream cosmetics contain. And other chemicals that are around that you may not be aware of, things like cleaning products and plastics and fire retardants. There's a whole lot of stuff that we have commonly in our homes that can actually be quite toxic. And maybe I'll give this link to Karen. There's a full list on Breast Cancer UK. It's a full list of all the chemicals and the products that are hormone disruptors. So it's really good to look at those and see exactly what's going on. Have a bit of a clearing the toxicity out of your life. And the final toxicity is about toxic beliefs. It's about the sort of the cultural dislike of female bodies, of aging, that we have all ingested. And, you know, we all live in this culture and we have all ingested it to some extent. And one of the easiest ways to kind of start to ease out of that is to start imagining that you're your own best friend. So when you get a critic attack or toxic, or you're really hating on yourself, you can call in this advocate. What would my best friend say? It's like, I can picture my best friend here, and she, you know, she's just like, oh, come on, Kate, you know. And you can, it's a really simple way of just accessing that kind voice and that gentleness and that self-soothing to reduce the blame and the shame that is so prevalent in our society about aging. So you already have everything you need. And so a lot of this information will have been familiar to you. You would have heard it before. But I really hope that I've been able to reframe perimenopause for you as a time of challenge, maybe, but also great possibilities. A time when you can allow more of yourself to emerge. 9:01. Okay, I'm going to stop the screen share and hand over to Karen.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was so interesting. I think particularly relevant is the stuff on stress and how much of a disruptor that can be. And I think it actually contributes to a lot of health areas. So it's no surprise that menopause and perimenopause is there. And I think for me personally, it's just really nice to see those two diagrams of your monthly cycle and then your life cycle kind of layered on top of each other in a really visual way, because I think it will really help to pinpoint and know where you are, whatever stage of your life you're in, whether you're premenopausal, going through it, or not even at that stage, but you kind of want to increase your awareness. So yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it. If it was our last live stream of 2020, so thank you for joining us. But yeah, we'll be back next year with more monthly live streams, so you can kind of learn about more organic beauty and well-being. But yeah, do check out the website. This weekend we've got lots going on. It's quite a big weekend in the retail world, so yeah, if you wanted to check out any self-care products, we've got lots of self-care rituals you can do online as well. And if you did have any questions on maybe some self-care using natural and organic kind of toxin-free products, as Kate very kindly plugged our website, then yeah, just reach out and I'll be happy to help. We're both going to stay on the chat for a few more minutes. If you did have questions that you wanted Kate or myself to answer, then more than happy to. But yeah, stay tuned for more events next year.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just to say, I have an online program which is to really kind of help you focus on your own self-care. It's really affordable, but I'm going to offer you participants a discount on that, so you can kind of ease your way sweetly out of lockdown into Christmas.
Yeah, get ready for Christmas.
And that will be on the follow-up link.
Yeah, details of that, thank you, nearly forgot that part, Kate. Details of that will be with you tomorrow, as well as the replay, and then also a link so you can sign up to Kate's site. There's loads of really useful articles on there, and there's also going to be a free gift, yoga nidra meditation. So yeah, lots of extra treats in addition to tonight's chat. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. So just to reassure you, if